that one, yeah. I'll be good on the radiator.
Don't text us one of us to buy it and then we can scan it.
Not that we give a fuck.
We've all got a separate USB, we've got everything.
You can't share that to Facebook.
Nothing on that.
I've got a Kindle that I keep and never.
So what I'll do, guys,
I've got all my pages.
I'll do. Is that another one of these kicking about? To move forward, or you don't have to. There it is. So thanks for that.
Yeah, might as well be social there.
No, we will.
In fact, I'll tell you
Yeah, I haven't messaged him. He said he was I haven't messaged him as such yet. Yeah.
Is it actually taking?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's try these ones.
I've got something for me, you know.
Serge will beat me, but maybe mentally. In secret.
I'll just set the Jewish Shandy next time.
What are you doing now?
Jewish Shandy next week.
Just working through getting on with what he needs to do. Contracts and stuff. It's not money to fill this in, but I want to compile a database of members, active members, and when we do like future invites, I'll prioritise, I'll make a group of the ones. Yeah, that's alright, check it.
Maybe while we're talking about members, don't let it delay anything that you've got in the pipeline at all, but pure matter of interest, have we lost them? Yeah, I mean, people having the contact and...
Yeah, there's like some activity. David Russell had something happening, other people have.
What's some of these ones? Have they gone all together?
Yeah, there's
They?
some people's have, yeah, some people's. I don't know what happened with Cassie. That was a few months, 6 months ago. There was David Russell, and there's allegations said, and it's just the whole Facebook is not trustworthy. That's why we built pro.com. It's not ours. You are you're ticking a box saying, "Oh, you are submitting, aren't you? You've submitted your legal person's name. You have no control, no authority, no jurisdiction. You've submitted, and we can't even say it's this, that, and the other. Like with the fact that Mark Zuckerberg Congress very shortly for the data mining. So that's English. Cambridge is English. So the organization is data persons, data to them. Some of these Analytica is teamed with them and gone that way and took them and then gone this way and get all to the market for the propaganda or marketing for political reasons. I mean, when you log on and you see your screen in the top right, depending on your preferences, Cambridge Analytica and Facebook have allowed those preferences. Track your history. Trying to get on their network, using their systems, replying. So, go on, what are you saying there, Craig?
You know, whatever you do, whatever you see going on, you see the opposition.
Yeah, we are live,
in
by
that
the way,
form.
on Facebook.
At the minute, everything seems to be breaking down. But nothing's breaking down. They've got total control of this. They've been running this for a long time. They know exactly what they're doing. But they're creating their own enemy, controlling their own enemy. And you do hear about things that you think they wouldn't let that go. Of course they'll let it go. Because it don't matter in the whole scheme of things. Because they've got everybody's thinking this side or that side. It's two sides to literally everything you look at. And you have both sides of it.
Yeah, looking the private, the good and the bad, the right, wrong.
You know, if they didn't have it all, this group would already be fine, everybody had been on it.
Yeah, but
they
if
are in a position, this group was struggling to get there, but you'll never get total control of it, and you're not trying to, you know you won't do it, you can't aspire to that.
We go from public
But
to
the
private.
reality is,
That's all
you
we-
can't get control of it, you're not going to break their control of it, they've been doing it too long. You just got to get your way through it.
the flip side of this analytics,
Equity. Yeah, equity, because they're equity essentially. What?
the flip side of this analytics stuff is like probably a lot of us onto Spls. When I found you through YouTube, through what you might like.
Yeah, from data that's recommended through your
Yeah.
history,
Your
keyword
Facebook.
searches. Yeah. And now there's technology where people are watching videos and you can take a still image, a screenshot, and it's called face as one of them,
Yeah.
and then it goes and looks on the internet database, it finds my face and goes, he's there, and then when they go to SPLs and they say, one of the 3 questions, it says, where did you find us? How did you find out about us? It says some of them face search, and I went, what's face search? And I went, we've gone another level up, you know. Right, before we go any further, we're going to go around this way with names, so let's say some names. Who are you?
I'm James.
James,
Steve.
Steve,
Sam.
Sam, Mark, Russ,
Craig.
Craig, then back down this way.
Show no, but show.
Alright, show, okay, yeah.
Josh.
Russ,
Nick.
Malcolm.
Maria,
Andy.
Paul, Keith, Ruth, yeah, Michelle. Paul, what are you doing detached at the back there? Is that what it is? Are you alright there? Yeah? Don't want to single you out because you've singled yourself out there. Right, so then let's go through a quick, let's just go through a quick register. Pass this round the table and then we'll pass it round the back. Because we're live, I'm not going to shout out names and things, but you see a name on this list, just tick it or something on there, yeah? You see your name, and if you want to write it on, by all means write it on, but it's just a register, because I've got your voluntary one and then that's the expected. So I'd like to see who's here extra and then what the expected is, that's all. It's just me and my numbers. It's all about numbers, these games. Does anybody have anything they'd like to cover at some point or to say, or an issue to hand that you would like us to evaluate or discuss?
Well, I did mention, you know, I was prepared to give it a plug, and it's on council at some stage, if time permitted.
Oh yeah, we've got plenty of time.
Yeah. But other than that, you know, yeah, I'll go with the flow.
Now this,
I'm sure you've got the agenda.
you know this working tax credit to that
Yeah.
used to be, whatever it still is.
Yeah, they've changed.
Years and years ago when I was at work, I was on a low income, and they paid me tax credits, and then I got a job, a better job, and then they made me pay back again. Is that right?
Overpayments.
Huh?
Yeah, because, well, it's
You
not
do
right.
pay
So
back.
in essence,
the commission
yeah.
still pay, well, it's still paying back now.
It's because you have signed and you've agreed, haven't you? You've accepted the full public liability. So when you're going in there, you've used your person, but you're not in personam. You are, you're not, you know, you are public. So because you're public, you have only the public law, the common law, the public law, and that's legislation, statute, the act, and everything that goes through in Parliament.
With benefits comes duties and
This was why we stopped claiming it. We told them
Oh,
to
so
shove
we
it.
need to do benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did 4 years ago, yeah, because what was happening was that they was paying us And then
Yeah,
at the end of every plan, I
Messi.
said,
Yeah, they asked for it, but I'd like to know what
Well, it's getting expensive.
value is,
You can deal with
the bills of
And it
exchange
was
work.
flipping.
A for B and P for next year.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm here as well, because I've been doing this endorsement the gyro bank checks, and basically I just count my money on. Obviously not every day. I want to see how it actually works. I just want to buy me on. Obviously not stop using money. Stop using what they call because that's very thing that enslaved us. Yeah. My agenda is to get people know you have God-given rights.
Yeah. That's about anything that comes through the electrical, it's all in big, whatever, kids, whatever. I'll find out about that.
Dave, if anyone's knowledgeable on land acquisition, being able to put it into trust, I want to talk about that.
That's a good one as well. My own gaff, my own farm.
Still a lot of land that's been unregistered.
That comes under the feet that we can, because we've got the internet, it'll come under 1066 land tenure and land registry and things like that. Is there anybody who's got anything they want to discuss or write to notes down and then we can go through it all?
Good news stories, anybody that's actually
No.
got something to share?
Just feeding tickets.
Stop paying. Just don't pay that. It's only an offer, it's not.
We'll cover that with penalty charge for notification.
As John Harris said, it's only an offer.
That was on the bridge.
Anybody got
Road tax and DVLA.
Yeah, good day.
First steps, Dave. First steps. Usually do prepare ourselves before we talk about it. So obviously you can't stay for these stuff, can you? You have to send your name.
I know people want to since we use it there's two of them, there's a 1707, there's a 1666 one.
There's lots. It's the sector relevant. Are we still on? Hello everybody, good morning to SPLs, we're live. It's working, we'll see how long it lasts. If it goes down, I will come back to you. I'm just taking questions on what the room wants, so we're going to go through that. I hope you can hear all right. Let me know if the sound's all good. Baron, Chris, Barry, Dean, Wayne, Mark Barnett's in the room and on the phone, Nicola, Jimmy, Ahmed, Charlotte, Wayne, Ricky Smith, good morning, peace and love brothers and sisters, it's on. Bear with us. You got any more topics? Just taking some ideas of things that anybody's on anybody's mind or they want to speak about, topics wise. Albert's in the house, yes brother, morning. Luke, Jersey, days up. Is there anybody that objects me to showing the camera just to show who's in the room to Spls on Facebook? Hide your face if not. That's all we got so far, guys. So to the, just so they can see. We're still arriving, it's a good turnout. We're on it. Yes, guys. Yes, if you just arrived, guys, welcome, thank you. We'd like you to put your names and check in on the list there. We've got some name badges for later on to make it easy. Pass some of these. I know it's a bit simple, but it works for me. I forget easily. Thank you.
Dave, another topic, the new data protection GDPR.
Oh, I know that was going to come on, that doesn't it? Yeah, GDPR.
Yeah.
You should be familiar with that. Well, so some of this, well, this is why we've got the laptop and projector, because I'd just rather go on the internet and get the concise, accurate data as it is, documents and things we've got. That's all good. So any other topics? Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's all right. That's good. So, who wants to speak today? I am. You are. Yeah, at some point. Andy. Does everybody know Andy?
Seen him bobbing about on Facebook.
People's Prince of the popular People's Front of Anglo territory.
I've been known to put in an occasional appearance.
He's seen us chatting or about. He's a good lad. He really is.
Oh yes.
We've got a lot to do, but right. So we'll start. Why are we here? Why are we here? If you're watching the news and you're familiar with what's going on in and around everywhere, like with the NHS, we're dealing with a guy called, we'll call him Dodgy Doctor, his Facebook channel. We're helping him with regards to like a 12-year mission that he's been on with the agencies and the trustees and the failing health from the NHS. So we are familiar with the trust and the trust technology, which we call new trust technology. And we are assimilating that data and seeing how it transpires across to the common law, the public, the statutory, the free man, the lawful rebellion, and then these books that I've just got out and shown you where it compiles to the merger of the sections 7 and 8 of the CPR, equity and trust. So you're here today to get information, to find information, and I thank you for coming, thank you for your time. There isn't a structure as such, but you see there's a problem and you know that things aren't right, and you may have heard about the NHS trusts and the 2 deaths that I spread the story on into the group and online, where a trust has apologised. The guy from the health department, it's the guy from the government come out of a department, a shop has a department, so he's come out of the health department and said, we're sorry for the 2 suicides. One family, they went to the legal services and says the mum has committed suicide. She was waiting for operations. She was messed around with the NHS and the services and the trust. She ended up taking her own life. He's come out and said, you know, I'm apologetic for the failings of the trust. These deaths could have been perhaps prevented. They're very careful and conservative to not admit liability, the wording that they use, but they're aware there's a problem, and they paid out a few £1 million for these suicides that have been perhaps notified to the government and to the state and to the judicial department for remedy and for not just for money. They're not saying mum's dead, give me money. They're saying mum's dead, your system has not helped us. We've come to you for help. You made us out to feel like that we was liars, that we didn't have the problem, and everything was such a battle that they gave up. So that also exposed 450 other deaths that trust had accrued. I sat up and I was in the back room tinkering around, and I was like, I need to go and see what this is, and I posted about that trust. And then yesterday, whilst I drove to Carlisle, I enjoyed the 7 hours round trip of travelling to go and get a birthday present for myself. And whilst I was listening to the radio, it came on about the trusts of the academic side, which I talked about with you last night, saying that some of them are getting £50,000 bonuses for an academic school, trustee, a CEO, and there's in the region of so many 100 million, I forget, 150 million roughly to spend each annum from what they call the public fund, the taxpayers fund, the national debt, and that 150 million gets divvied up across so many academies. Harris are a managing agency for these academies, and they deal with some of these contracts. And they're saying that there's a bit of austerity being mentioned in the government with regards to the teachers, because they're on a substantially lower percentage pay than doctors, nurses, fire, police. They've been on a pay freeze and they do classroom work. So these guys are educating, yeah, they are schooling and trying to educate the children, and they're on the front line. So, you know, I think they deserve a good wage and pay them right. So this news story is saying you've got a 50 grand a year wage rise, but the academy and the trust can't afford equipment, can't afford books. It's struggling to meet its bills. It's asking the beneficiaries, which are actually been put in the legal trustee position, but the beneficiaries, which would be the parents' children, and the children, to pay £20 a week or £20 a month for the subsidising of the schools, when these guys are taking more than what they need from the trust. And when the government's asked the trustees and the CEOs of these, like we'll say 35 top paying academies, and they've gone to them, they've come back, and the responses that they've given for paying themselves extra money in times of where the money's short is that it's unsatisfactory. But the government and the public have no redress on this at the minute. So it shows you that there are trusts about and how they work and how they operate, and agencies. And we've made a lot of mistakes whilst we've been discovering all of this with the recognition of contract law, what is contract law, public and private, the A for V, the debt accreditor, and what we recognise as what relationship it actually is, and is it a contract, is it a letter, or is it a notice, and how do we deal with that correctly and effectively. So we haven't got all the answers, but because we've set up this master brain of did anybody watch or look at Napoleon Hill, Think or Grow Yourself Rich?
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is. If you watch that, it is about 2.5 hours, but he goes on about the natural law and the consciousness of the tribesman, and how historically mankind has progressed and what mankind's mission is. And you take the legal construct, the matrix, and the money, and everything that we know that is in our life, and you go to the side where you was hunting for maybe 2 to 4 hours a day, you know, and things like that. Life was simple, and what is happiness, what is the true mission of life, and then you compare it to where we are. It's like a Zen-like approach to life, but it compares modern day, which he was in the 50s then speaking about it, similar principles to Alan Watts. And they go on about, you know, how are you happy, how do you feel, are you you know, in touch with yourself. And that's where we had chats as well. Andy's gone through an amazing journey from what he shared with us and myself, and it comes into the health and wealth then, because this legal and money and financial and government and political and the responsible side is there, but then you have your family's health and your wealth. And if our brothers and sisters are committing up to 84 suicides, what was it, a week or a month? A week was it? Yeah, disgusting. Well, I'd take all of them 84, you know, we'll put them in the trust, and we're not saying we'll save their lives, but we can give them direction, hope, support. I don't know if you've ever run out of that thing called promissory notes. You know, if your wallet, so your bank account and your wallet haven't got any coins or bits of paper in, that we call cash and money, then to go to the system for help, there isn't much help there. You need to contract, you need to submit, you need to beg, you need to appeal, and who does that? You know, that's what a dog does, kind of, or something. You know, it's not what we do. If we're free and intelligent and in 2018, the 21st century, and it seems that we are at the mercy of the state and Big Barry, and if we dare say anything otherwise, then you pay for it financially, or they'll put you in a warehouse, like where I've worked in warehousing before, and put pallets in racking. You know, they hold them for a cost for a third party. Well, the state, the Crown, will put any of you or anybody on a protest in a, you know, once they've processed you and got you to contract, they'll put you in a cell, or ultimately in a custodial sentence, and they'll warehouse you for X amount of time, and then start drawing on the bond that doesn't exist, apparently, to get the money for that. They get paid if you go into prison. We don't pay, or jail in America. It's all behind the scenes, as I said. In America, when they're in a court, they have a plea bargain in America in a court. Yeah, what are they pleading for then? They're not pleading for justice, they're pleading for some bargain of the money for what's going off. And in England, it's nothing but a business, as Roger Taylor says from What There. And you know, it's just, you don't believe it. It can't be. It's justice. When you go to court and when a policeman gets you, it's real law and it's serious. You lot are crazy. I don't want to listen to you. And then after a bit, you start thinking, hang on, these guys are very nice, and you respect them, and you go in initially, like I have done, getting access to my children, and I notice the language, the domain, how they are, how they look through the nose at you, the entire energy and feel of the courts, of the police, of anything. It's not good, is it? Even if you've done nothing wrong, if you go for help and you say, I've just seen a murder, I need to report. All right, sit down. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you know, and it's like, oh, you haven't done anything, you're not in the criminal area, you haven't caused harm, injury and loss, and you still can find, because they're not happy. And it's like, if the police, you know, are getting, watch the videos, come to the meetings, and then make your notes, and go away, but I don't want to be like classed as a talker or a leader. I'm not after any fame or anything. It was because of my children and then PCNs and stuff that I had with my property. I was like, how dare you, you know what I mean? You threaten, you've already took my blood and my flesh, and now you're on about taking the 4 wheels and engine just because I may have made a mistake at some point, and now I didn't get the letter. You know, sometimes you don't get the letters, and then they go straight to the final notice. When in law, you need to have all of the process followed. That's a CPR. Good morning. Hello. Come in, mate. Take a chair. Make yourselves welcome. It's all right. It's better late than never. That's what we say. Who are you? Just tell everyone your name.
My name's Daz from Knots.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and you, my lady, are?
Good to see you.
Your honour.
Well done.
Holly. All right.
Dave, am I right in thinking that it was last month that they passed like an act, I think it was, where the NHS trusts are effectively being battered into submission, and this is why this is happening now, because they can only get new funding for new stuff if they sell their assets.
I'm not sure. I haven't
I'm sure like, it was last month. I could be wrong, I might need to Google it.
That report recommended they sell their assets, didn't it?
Yeah, effectively they're not going to get anything new, any new funding. They're not going to be at the top of the pile for public funds without selling their assets.
See, the problem I've seen.
Oh, yeah. Privatisation.
They only own the men's health. All the rest is subsidised and third party interlopers, yeah.
The problem I've seen with this is
they're trusting the trust of the NHS. Okay. That's also filtered through a lot. I mean, the money comes to the UK, doesn't it, offshore?
I mean, to talking land we're talking about, it's not, you know, they might say, but it's all about, well, these people turning round and saying that, you know, it's land that's in trust, you know, I mean, it is public land.
Yeah, it is, it's you're right, it's held in, they are, what would they call it?
And it was initially held in perpetually.
Holding companies, they're like holding it in trust, hold the land, the property into the trust, yeah, you're right.
It's our birthright land.
Yeah, it comes back to the land.
It's our birthright land.
I'm just trying to start to go live again, so
Sell it, fill it through
so,
When Richard Branson and people like that.
Yeah.
Richard Branson.
Yeah. How much of the NHS does he own?
48% with IBM as well.
By himself.
Him and IBM.
10% of IBM and Devonshire Police.
They'll be coming around with little stickers on it. Sponsored by show.
Your ankles will pay
right, so, yeah, as was expected. Carry on.
In association with.
There you go. I think in Lincolnshire they've already done
In
it.
association with. I've seen with Robert
I know.
McAlpine.
I've seen police cars somewhere with signs
Yeah.
on it.
In association with Robert McAlpine, a builder's firm. They're in association with anyone that can send them
Sponsored
over.
by
Thank you very
people
much.
That's what I posted.
And he likes it.
Branded on the list.
Turned it off, I hope it
No one else used to have.
And then they're going to get referrals from the rest.
Yeah, but the bear and the staff, where's everything gone? That's right, Warwickshire, where's it all gone?
Yeah. So,
That's a private corporate entity.
it's completely gone.
And they've got more authority than their Tesco security guard.
Oh, yeah.
Just something was going on Cambridge Road.
We'll have a look in a bit, we can go online.
And what with the umbrella, you can't have apparently some like
Trackers are looking for them.
then we should please go by IBM or something.
Yeah, what we can do is go on Dun and Bradstreet or Company's House and you look at the listings, so we can do that.
United Kingdom's Corporation.
Yeah, you go there. Dun and Bradstreet, Company's House, you put in the company on your Play Store, you go to the App Store, you guys, you go to the App Store and go for Company's House and search for that, iPhone, Play, whichever it is, and you can get Company's House app, and then when you put the company's name in and you search, it will bring up the data, the CEO, if there's any outstanding orders, things like that, so that's good to get. Instead of doing the freedom of information and stuff, if you just want to get directors, company information, registration, if it's dissolved or not, currently in trading.
It's not all in there though, is it?
Not all of it, no, but you can get some, yeah, you get the basics.
Association, that's what you need.
Memorandums and articles, but why do you need that?
So they've got their own rule book and it has to be written down when they register. So it effectively tells you what that company will and won't accept. And you'll probably find, well, most companies, I think it's like paragraph 4 onwards, you'll see that they all accept promissory notes, they all issue promissory notes.
There's your line. I'll give her a ring if it gets too dark. So yeah, would you say that some CEOs of a company can act as a trustee then, in a trustee capacity as well, can't they?
Yeah.
And it stipulates that in that part of the agreement for the trading and transactions, because when we've done our research, it actually says within that terminology that the CEO of a company has the capacity to act as a trustee. So I am still learning and cognising this. The admins can help me out. Leon, Dean, a few of the others that are in the admin side of research this are competent, but I can find it out if I need to. I've got this trust, this private trust that I'm sorting out, so I'm focusing my research and development. It's a big, as you see, in public, private, statutory, and then the companies themselves and everything. It's about responsibility. So like, where were we talking about this stuff? So I think it's poignant for me to read this because it gets it out of the way. And it's about the trust and equity, and I did read a bit of it to Andy yesterday when we was on the video. But the legal name, yeah, I've got some stuff about that: Roman, common, civil law, this kind of stuff. So I kind of predicted what you'd want to hear about, or what the top, we can see what the top issues are. Pardon me. When I drink coffee, I get a little indigestion. I've got such a violent tummy. I apologise in advance.
Some water.
It's just acid, but yeah, I don't know why. I can't stop drinking it though. I went to the doctor and says every time I drink coffee it gives me a bad tummy. He said stop drinking coffee, but it's not a joke. I carry on, so it's my own fault.
And this didn't write you out 20 prescriptions as well.
I was going to say, I'm surprised if you didn't get some
health and wealth. If I'm clever, health and wealth.
It's the usual response, isn't it?
My friend, they don't need anti, they just have some of them, and that sorts out any indigestion. And then when they get older, I'll start eating chalk and whatever else they give us. Right then, so I'll read about equity and common law because that's quite poignant where we're at, and see what you think. And then if you want to stop me, just say stop or something and ask a question and I'll stop because it's quite long. Alright? This isn't really working, is it? You can all hear me alright, can't you? So,
Yeah.
it's just for the recording, but equity and common law. The two separate streams of law running in the same channel. So I've taken this from, it says October 31st, 2012. Obviously that was 6 years ago by a user called Dynalex. And it was on about the two streams of jurisdiction. They run in the same channel, they run side by side, and they do not mingle their waters. And it was quoted, some of this is quoted, the introduction from Ashburner's Principles of Equity, 2nd edition, page 18. When we structure the website, what I'll do with some of the PDFs is put up the relevant PDFs that Christian Walters or Richard Ansar or anybody else has mentioned and said, with the learning curve, where's good references to go. So when you can actually learn and actually read the citations and the actual practices as it's been applied in the past with case law references, what type of law area it is. Is that going to annoy you? I might have to ring her and see where the light switch is. That's quite embarrassing.
No, just carry on. It's all right,
Let me know. Yeah, if it gets a paid, let me know.
Was staring at a blue screen most of the day anyway? Or
No, but that might, yeah, that'll do your head in.
That's a fucking set
No, I know about that. So, here we go. If you got a question, stop me and I'll stop and then we'll go through it or we'll find out. So the introduction tells us that in brief, equity has its origin in the Old English courts, chancery, namely the court of the chancellor. Due to either the inability of the king's justices to enforce judgments against powerful individuals, some noble families were very much a law unto themselves in their earldoms, dukedoms, etc. during the medieval period, or with increasing frequency in later years. Defects or undue harshness of the common law people were driven to submit petitions to the king, who was considered to be a repository of divine justice. So the things was like that, you know, the king was like there was a movement there, and it's basically saying that those and the dukes and the whole aristocrats didn't have a fair deal. So, yeah. Petitions were often passed to the Lord Chancellor, who would dispose justice in the name of the king. The king was obviously on his behalf. He was appointed, in office and whatnot. The passage of time, such petitions were directed to the Chancellor, and the office of Chancery began to function as a court of law. A significant aspect of the equitable principles developed in these courts of Chancery was that they were so developed by priests. Most chancellors of the medieval period were men of the cloth. That's interesting in itself, really, with the ecclesiasticals and canons that we find. This ensured the principle of equity were fundamentally based on the concepts of natural justice, in keeping with the lines of the Christian tradition of good and evil, and indeed in ancient usage the word equity means natural justice. The different views taken in certain situations by the principles of common law and the principles of equity naturally led to conflict and confusion. In the reign of King James I, it was held that decisions of the courts of chancery would have overriding authority. So if common law issue came up, the chancery would override it, you know. I'm not so much sure about criminal, because criminal's criminal, but with civil issues, I think they said the chancery courts would have overriding authority. While equity was initially free of the concepts of precedent, from the late 1500s to the mid-1800s, a body of precedent of cases based on equitable principles began to take shape. So there was a 300 period of history there that they're referencing. And the rules of principles of equity took their final form with clear lines and with the introduction of the Judicator Acts of 1873 and 1875. The Court of Chancery, along with the other courts such as the Queen's Bench, Common Pleas, Exchequer Chamber, Court of Appeal in Chancery, were absorbed by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court, the Royal Courts of Justice, the Supreme Court, that's in London, isn't it? Does anybody ever know about that or any dealings with that or why they get involved with anything?
Do you say Judicator Act of when? Judicator Act of what?
Where is that from now? 1500. So the Judicature, which is, how do you say it? Judicator, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm saying it right. Judicator Acts of 1873 and 1875. The Court of Chancery, along with the other courts, such as the King stroke Queen's Bench. So it depends. It's called the King's Bench. As King, we are as King. As King, the questions in personam. So yeah, the King or the Queen's Bench. It's the Queen at the minute. Common Pleas. Not really heard of that one, but common pleas must be when you plea under common law. Exchequer Chamber, Court of Appeal in Chancery, and they're all absorbed by the Supreme Court. So he doesn't say Section 7 and 8 CPR merger, but that's where we found equity hiding within the CPR mergers. So that's why we got these books, and that's why I go and look for it for ourselves rather than download a PDF and hope that that information we was reading was right. We went, right, if you're telling us that, then we need to go and find it and have a look, don't we, and get the first-hand knowledge. Hello there, good morning.
Morning.
Who are you, sir?
Ian McCloskey.
Ian McCloskey, okay. If we could just get a name badge or a sticker, something to fill in here, but find your seat, fill that in, some details.
Dave, there's some more chairs downstairs.
Here's one here, look, we're just saving him for Ron. Alright, Ian, you're welcome. If you want a cup of tea or anything, get downstairs, there's all machines down there. We're still on as well, I'm holding down the video, this is unbelievable. It's not even miracle season, so where did we get to? Good and evil, blah blah blah. So equity means natural justice. The different views taken in certain situations by the principle of common law and the principles of equity naturally led to conflict and confusion in the reign of King James I. It was held that decisions of the courts of chancery, I read that bit out, and then you never got that court. It would be fair to say that the Judicature Act played the role of fusing the system under which both the common law and equity was administered, namely an amalgamation of the different courts under one. This can be equated to reference made in a statement that sets the theme for this article, the two streams of jurisdiction. And I'll pause there because in the early days somebody posted something by a guy called Dean Corey. It was Baron Monroe. And he kind of overwhelmed me when I first met him because I was quite somewhat way behind him with my cognition of the public, private courts, layers of courts, chancery, common law, de facto courts, and it's just amazing. So, yeah, when he started to mention how about the two tiers of law, I went, what do you mean two tiers of law? There's criminal and, civil. He went, no, public and private. I went, what's that all about? He goes, well, and then he explained it. I went, what? And this was some of the information, not exact, and I went, I don't know what you mean. And I need to go and learn. It was, it's a journey that you go on. So whatever you are, wherever you are, and whatever area you're interested in, equity is at the baseline of all courts. So we would say that all court systems are an equitable area. Even the lower ones, the equity can be managed in all courts. All courts recognise it, but they might have not the correct capacity, jurisdiction to actually deal with it. So you try and deal with it and get a remedy seat from a different court elsewhere. We've got some. It's all right. I don't mind your coffee, but I want to give you one of these just in case you get fit. It's all good. Don't worry. So yeah, it's there's two tiers, and there is a lot of tiers, but what they're essentially saying is the public and the private, so meaning the common law and equity. Common law has been replaced with public trustee status, so we would go, it's common law, I'm a common law, so no, you don't want to say that, because you can say that, we follow common law, we're governing, we're self-governing, and we govern that within our own, trio of mind, body and soul. Your person is not governed by you, it's governed by assumptions, presumptions, maxims, and the law, the public statutory law, because you can't get out of that. I go to work as a slave, clock in, I must follow the public statutory law as per the terms of my contract, especially when I've got a team of 120 heads running around a warehouse on MHE, walking around on foot, using dock levelers, going on to HGVs, using battery operated, little mini units to move pallets around. It's just proper chaos. So I've agreed to that. I've needed to go and get my, money, my credits as clocking in as a slave to get the sweat equity. So I've got to follow that public. You have to follow that public law. The Act of whatever it is now, 1974, is it 78? Agency when that came in, it was quite late on the Health and Safety Act. You look at commercial areas, so it's good to abide. You don't pay for it. It doesn't cost you anything, and if you adhere to it, it might save your life. So that's all right. It's when they come knocking at the side of the window. Are you the driver? Is this your vehicle? You've got to tell like that. Well, hang on a minute. Let's just and you start just trying to argue your corner. You've got something to hide. Oh, where are you going? No, I'm a private man. It's all right. We're on a public highway. Let's just calm down and see that how it is. So, I just wanted to explain a bit about the interpretation of where it is and how it is. The two tiers of justice, and it can be confusing at times, but the criminal and civil are always there, and if you commit a criminal act, then you would be in the public, wouldn't you? You can't go argue a private case if you go and mow somebody down, or you lose the moment of sanity and you have a fight and knock somebody out and they die. then you're going to deal with that in the public courthouse, and it will be on the record, on the public record, under common law manslaughter or murder. If you have a disagreement, and it's a civil one, then that civil one can be dealt with in the private, and you deal with it in the private, and they force you to go to court. If you've got a private issue, then you don't deal with it in a public courthouse, do you? Because the gallery and the dock's open, the public are there, and if you want to be bringing up such things as promissory notes or personal, I might have to defend a trust later down the line, and someone might say, get down here, fraud, blah blah blah, not declaring anything, not paying tax, we don't like it, you know, go and answer to the black robe, to the cardinals, the black nobility, and you go down and they want you to demonstrate a trust exists and that you're in a private capacity and it isn't a public one, and they might consider it being an agency, and so you might be called to a public courthouse and I've got to deal with a private trust in a public place. If I express that, this is my learning, what I'm bringing you up to speed with while it's fresh. If I express a private trust in a public courthouse, I'll dissolve that trust there and then, so it ceases to exist, and that's the trick they play on you. He'll say, I don't see a trust, it might be, I see an agency, and then I'll have to explain about who holds the title deed to the property of the trust without expressing the trust, and saying that an agency, they don't have, example would be you don't have control of the property. You take a computer to a pawn shop and you give the guy your laptop, he doesn't have that outright, you know, ownership. He has a title deed that you fill out, and you give him that title deed for a temporary time, and he gives you the money, and the agreement is you pay him back plus the interest and you get your property. You fail to collect that property, then he keeps that, and he's got the title deed then to say that he's got that. So that's how you'd say, like, he's not actually owning the property, he's like an agent, an agency relationship is such, and it's to do with property. So with the website, the bank account and anything else that's an asset to the private trust that's put in the res as property for the trustees to manage, then that's how you could argue it, you see. But so you won't want to do all that in a public courthouse. You have to be careful how you play the games. Go on, sorry.
So how would you get yourself out of the public courtroom and into a private courtroom at that point?
You could deal with it in the public courthouse, and you could say that you've got a copy of you won't have the original, but you've got a copy of the declaration, the paperwork, and it's written into it. You can put into the declaration that if at some point later down the line you are ever forced or compelled to express the private trust in the public, then this is the method of which you would like it to be done. You can stipulate that in the declaration, and you can also let the judge know that this isn't some kind of knowledge that can be brought.
Is there my question is more: is there a procedure of getting the judge to excuse you so that you
can go approach the bench and give him paperwork. No, I'm not an expert. I'm actually on this point now, learning it, so I'm just expressing letting you know. That's food for thought. Anybody on there on the playback on the live channel. We'll look at that. So I'll need to find that out.
You can question them, say, are you able to see private matters?
Yeah, that's it. You put in the declaration, you have the paperwork. You wouldn't express it. You go and approach him and say, and you'd be whispering like, like you watch YouTube videos, and then they'll say some smart ass, one of us sovereign will be like blah blah blah, and he'll call the alleged prosecution or the claimant, and they'll go to the front, and there's you in a modern courthouse, you've got no working mics, and they'll talk to the judge, and all you can hear is whispers and muffled, and they're not telling you, they're not letting it on the record what's going off. So then you do the same, and he'd be like, so it seems that on this there is in fact they deal with it hopefully like that. If not, you'd want to say that you need excusing. To deal with that.
Well, you need him on the record. You need him on the record, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you have clean hands, then you would require.
Does he have?
Simple.
Yeah, you've got your clean hands, but the system's trying to trick you because if you don't know and can stand on it, every little detail, they will get you and they'll shoot you. They'll get you to give you a loaded gun, basically. Yeah. And if you're going to go there and do the dance, the same as
you
if
can't speak their language. Everything that we say needs to be clarified. You just put it on a piece of paper and pass it to the clerk. Say silence. Because they'll try and get you through talk and tap it through legalese words. They want you with your answers. Everything that you would say and answer is already written in all pre-hand. It's in the paperwork. Have a look.
I'll refer back to my paperwork.
I refer you to my claim right. I refer you back to
your affidavit's there. It's all there. Have a look.
Yeah, but with regards to trust, I need to look at that. It's Chancellor Equity. Does the judge have permission to deal with equitable matters? Would be a question you'd ask them, maybe something like that. Yeah, what jurisdiction does the court lie in? This is a public courthouse. I have a private trust. I'm aware that if I express it in a public courthouse, there's an issue. I know he knows the game. You know the game. I'm not sure of it, so I don't claim to know everything. I just give it to you to where I'm up to, and if anybody else can step along and go, oh, it's, you know, then by all means. If not, we'll find it out in due course. So it would be fair to say that the Judicator Act played the role of coffee time again. Played the role of fusing the system under which both common law and equity was administered, namely in amalgam. I've covered that. While the above is somewhat straightforward, it is this author's opinion that the reference "do not mingle their waters" implies that the common law and equity themselves were not fused, but continue to function as two separate systems of law. That's important. So they didn't get rid of common law, they didn't get rid of equity, they just had them as two separate functions. And then obviously the 2008, the court's bonds dissolving, they're not bonded, are they? There's no securities and trading with no securities and things like that have been mentioned along the time of the lower de facto circuit court systems. What we're talking, county, magistrates, all these kind of lower civil ones that you go into. Well, they deal with criminal actually.
Sure.
It's just switch to,
They deal with whatever they like, don't they?
Yeah. Administrative hearing.
When they
de jure is the higher court, you would say. Yeah. The higher one, the higher court, supreme. Go on, what was that?
When they all dissolved in 2008, the lower.
Not all, yeah, the lower ones, yeah, that was Roger Taylor again, and a few others were on about it on YouTube saying, but that's when they were aggressively fighting, where is your bond? I do not have an international treaty. I am not the surety. I am not the surety for this debt. Are you under your oath today? We was going in aggressively. You don't go in to fight them, as we're finding out. You go in to control them. If you go in and get the backs up and you show them that you're vexatious and that you're going in with no respect for them, then what's that going to do?
Yeah. We're making claims that we can't prove. We may know that they're bankrupt, but you still have to prove it.
Yes.
If you're claiming it, it's not
saying
that we know. Well, nice for you, prove it.
I mean, it's their playground, doesn't it?
It's a business, and it displays the business icon behind you as the emblem of the crown here in the courthouse. That's the corporation, that's the business, the Crown of London, the CPS, the London Temple BAR, the police, the barristers, the Citizens Advice Bureau, ex-lawyers and barristers, well, lawyers and barristers.
All under one umbrella.
Yeah, they're in there.
Registry office is company as well.
You're spot on, David, you're spot on.
Yes,
Because I've actually been into a court. I mean, it's very, very easy to clear the lot. And you can do it in less than, you can literally do it in seconds.
Commanded, yeah. You command them.
It's what comes afterwards, because when they all get up and leave the car, and they get that red button or whatever button it is they've got underneath there.
We've been robbed.
Security men moving.
I'm just wondering what it is you're
And they've got their hands up, you know, and you're stood there on your run and you're telling them to keep their hands down, you know, and they're not listening to you. And
yeah, you've got to instruct them, and you've got to, they're there to be compelled to be instructed in a civil issue, not a criminal one, because the criminal one you're going to have to answer for that and be cross-examined and so forth. But the civil side of it, you can go in there and you can instruct as king in the, you know, it's the equity is the language of the court, and it's the king's court. And if you go in there with that knowledge, and when they say, what do you want? What can I do for you? It's I don't want anything, or what I wish and I require is the, you know, the terminology. Each and every word is key. So,
would you like me to do that for you? So I wouldn't want you to. I require for you to do that.
man.
Yeah. Let me carry on with this then. So they function as two separate systems of law, common law and equity. This article will therefore aim to establish that while common law and equity came to be administered under the same system, the fundamental principles of common law and equity continue to act independently of each other in the interest of justice. This can be shown most effectively through the reference to decided cases where it will be seen that the equitable principles have produced results quite different to what would be expected under the principles of common law, and extending these decisions to derive certain fundamental facts as to the position equitable principles hold within the legal system independently of the common law. Independence of equity and common law through decided cases. A landmark case in this regard was that of the Central London Property Trust Limited versus High Trees Limited, 1947. The facts of the case were as follows. During the Second World War, countless people had left the city of London to escape the German bombing of Britain's capital. As a result of this, many housing complexes were vacated and left empty. In a certain block of flats had been leased out for a period of 99 years at £2,500 a year. To curb a vacation, the landlord had offered to cut the rent by half, £1,250 a year, once the blitz was over, and the tenants returned the landlord litigated to recover the full sum of £2,500. As per the common law, the plaintiffs would have been legally able to recover the sum of £2,500, even for the period where the flats had been empty, since the lease that fixed the amount was under seal. Hence, according to common law, could not be changed by a mere agreement, but only through a deed. However, the principles of equity took on a different view. The judge deciding the case, Lord Denning, pops up. There has been a series of decisions over the last 50 years, which, although they are said to be cases of estoppel, are not really such. They are cases, so if you don't recognise that, then there's cases going past that aren't really what they are. And if you don't pull it up and correct it, they'll treat it as that, and you need to know in the voice and stop the process and recognise that the actual correct, the misconstrued relationships or the unconscionable conduct, as it would be called. But there are cases in which a promise was made which was intended to create legal relations, and to which the knowledge of the person making the promise was going to be acted on by the person to whom it was made, and which it was in fact acted on. In such cases, the courts have said that the promise must be honoured. As I have said, they are not cases of estoppel in the strict sense. They are really promises intended to be binding, intended to be acted on, and in fact acted on. The Discipline of Law, Lord Denning, 1979. So that's really recent. Compared to 1882 and things like that. It's not, no, I was born, it's 40 years ago. Yeah. In the judgment, it was held that the equity, it was held through equity. The promise made was binding on the party, making it the common law did not make such an allowance, and the plaintiff could not recover the full amount of money for the period when the flats were empty. What a nasty man. The decision, in my opinion, highlights the following key points. So while both principles of common law and equity were administered as one totality, in the above case we see principles of equity coming into play to lead the judge to arrive at a very different decision than he would have had to make if he followed in common law principles. Hence we see equitable principles functioning quite distinctly from those of the common law in the interests of justice. As is quoted in Lord Denning's book, The Discipline of Law, a previous case where similar equitable principles could have been applied, Salisbury's Marquise versus Gilmore, Lord Justice McKinnon felt unable to take an equitable view. So that was Lord Justice McKinnon. What was that I've just said? The Disciplines of Law, Lord Denning's book, and the Salisbury Marquise versus Gilmore, 1942. Lord Justice McKinnon felt unable to take an equitable view to a decision made by the House of Lords in Jordan versus Money, 1845. It's all recorded on here anyway, it's still going, I think, so you'll get it back. Which was thought to be binding, where the concept of estoppel was confirmed to representations of existing fact. I can email that as well that you need. The significance of this observation is that through principles of equity, though the principles of equity could be used to take on a different view of the situation, as opposed to that taken by common law, in some instances needed courage on the part of the judge to break free from the bindings of common law and allow these equitable principles to take flight. Well, no courage, you'd be compelling him. Once you know what you know, you would be compelling them to do that as a trustee, as a fiduciary, and you'd be correcting the relationship, the beneficiary, the CQV, the sole shareholder, the authorised representative and agent in office, that kind of stuff. So whilst he might have felt, what did it say there? He felt that he was, he needed courage. Well, he wouldn't need courage. Back then he might have, because the attitude and the knowledge, as you see, it wasn't as in any way like what we have got now. So they were probably quite humble in them days, and didn't probably say boo to a ghost there, because they'd have got tanned. Preposterous, come on. We see the action of Lord Denning in the High Trees cases was doing precisely this, giving due credence to the independent place of the principles of equity held in the legal system, free from the rigidity of the common law in the interests of doing justice. That the decision was possible in the High Trees case was due to the conflict or variant clause. We've got another case there which I'm going to skip through because it's time consuming. it is clear that, let's say, conclusion. In conclusion, it is submitted that with reference to case law, it becomes clear that after the implementation of the Judicature Acts, the streams of equity and common law began to flow in the same channel. So we're going through the same court systems, basically, being unrecognised and going through as common law, public law, going through the same channel, but they also can deal with equity, but they didn't tell you about that, and like they didn't tell you you're the creditor, you're only the debtor. So this is the ignorance is no defence, I'm afraid. So there you go. That's it. They don't teach you at school. You don't get any knowledge of this. You don't get any pokes or help. You find this out because you land it on your arse and you try to defend yourself, or you have property taken, and then you're like, hang on a minute, this can't be right. You end up watching a random YouTube video, making notes, and seeing somebody get rid of a bailiff. It's not a bailiff. It's really a debt collector, and it's like, well, how does Chrissy Morris do that? How does he? That's not real. You can't do that. Yeah, that's it. It's just when you start,
it's vigilant, doesn't it?
You've done it. I've had to go now. Sergio's had to go. We're a bit scary at first. It's not pleasant to go to these big barriers and so forth. But once you know and you get it and you think, right, okay, then what's the worst that can happen? You know, and if it's going to go well,
baby steps.
You've got so much to win and so little to lose. So getting that capacity and that knowledge.
Equity puts right the wrongs in common law.
Yeah, it supersedes
all
that
the
as well.
assumptions and presumptions can be removed through the maxims of equity as well if you invoke them correctly, can't they?
Yeah, we was looking at the common law, free man of the land movement and lawful rebellion and everything like that, no names or groups mentioned, but when I was looking at that and they were saying that common law is this and this is what you've got and there's no contract, there's no consent, I return it back and I do all this, you're doing the actions, but there was no closure, no remedy, no dealing with it. It was keeping it at bay for an amount of time, and then it was like, well, what happens after that? Well, all right, he's gone away, but now what happens? I don't want to sit there for a year thinking, well, maybe they'll be back, maybe I'll have a warrant out for my arrest, maybe. It's not. You've still got that bad mental health again. You haven't dealt with it. You've got fear, you've got anxiety. Yeah, it's gone for now, but you need that closure, and that's what we're after. So. That's the aim of the game here. So that's what we found with the common law. Was saying it seemed great at first. It seemed like the Christmas present everybody wanted, but then when you apply it practically, principally, in letters, in person, nobody. What do you mean common law? That's gone. There's no such thing as common law. And you're like, well, actually there is, but what we're referencing, like, it's just public trustee, and that's the assumptions and presumptions, and that's from when you got bonded as a child by your parents, handing over your claim of right to the bondsman, which was acting as the general register in the office of position for the state. The state never does it itself. They always subcontract out the dirty jobs. They always get someone else to do it, another agency. It's never like the Queen directly or the Treasury directly. It will be a department with authority operating under licence from. Yeah, that's, you see what it is. It's not. Yeah, you see, it's the trustees.
All they do is fraudulent. But you need to know what you're saying and doing to call them out on it.
Absolutely.
It's getting the path back to the person you need to go after.
See, we're all playing, we're playing drafts, they're playing chess. We're learning to play chess now and just getting a bit better and faster than them at the moves. We're 2 or 3 moves in front like we do on the board. Instead of letting them make the move and we think, bloody hell, what do we do with that one? I can see that one. Emphasise the vision a bit more further forward, that was for me anyway. So.
There's a document that John Harris did. It says Ministry of Justice Trustee Office.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And he was on it. That's what I mean. He might have been a bit clouded and confused. Well, I'm not going to comment on that because I didn't understand what he was saying when I watched him initially. But then after I'd watched him, I went on to others, and I haven't really revisited any of that to see now and compare what I know and what he knows. Because when I first saw him, I was like, what the hell? It's too much. I need to watch that 5 more times. It's a 2 hour something video talking. There's more than one. And then Santos Bonacci, Know Thyself. That's a good one. That's a massive epic series of videos. And you make your own choice and decision. It's a belief system like the law of the land is common law and it is by consent. That is true. That is 100%. Theresa May said it. Various other public offices have said it. We've got it recorded, written down.
It's there in black and white on their info about common law, about it's consent of the government. Because they're giving away law, consent of the government.
Seen one of the Black's Law books.
Isn't there something that runs alongside that? I heard somewhere, I don't know whether it's true or not. consent of the government, but also if enough people allow it to, it will be law as well.
They got tacit agreement, is it?
No.
You can't let a wrong run for a long time and it'll become a right. Doesn't matter how many people are there. Wrong.
Palestine, Israel, look at that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Look at all that going on. It's
Courts need to
wrong.
rely on what's right and wrong and what the fact of it is. Not assumptions and presumptions. They've got
Of
to
child
produce the fact.
Yeah, I've got one for
There's
you.
the evidence.
It was on the news
What's
this
right and
morning
what's wrong.
driving down that Israel have shot some Palestinian children because the Palestinian children were going to go through the fence and the fence is electrocuted. So they're not realistically ever going to have a chance of getting through that. But the Palestinians were apparently sending the army and this isn't my words, this is a reported story, but what you're saying is you can't allow a wrong to become a right. If so many people push that forward, that would just be what we call dictatorship then into some extent, because your rights and your freedoms are ignored. So the human rights for everybody on the planet are universal. The United Nations Human Rights Act tells you in there about the human rights. So for children to be shot, this is the story that I heard. It was on BBC Radio 4 on the drive down, and this guy was answering. He hung up on, who's the man that does that question time where it has the audience, Dimbleby. Sounded like him on the video, on the radio recording, and he says, so these children and women and that have been shot in the name of protecting Israel, what's happened here? And it's like, oh yeah, Hamas, this, that, the other, you don't know what they're going to do, they will kill our people, we had to do it. And he's like, yeah, but you've shot women and children, do you realise? And he's like, yes, but sometimes it's needed. I'm like, what? And he said that, because you cannot make a wrong a right. That is a wrong, that shit's wrong. You've killed women and children, what for? Because they were coming up to an electric fence and they would kill our people. Yeah, but it's an electric fence and the children? Yes, but this is the plan. And it's like, I'm driving down to have this meeting. I thought, I hope at some point I get to get that out. So I do, I'm a mouthpiece for that. But how is that right? Do you know what I mean? How is that right? And this guy, he said, he's the news guy from the BBC. I never defend the BBC, but he went, he gave him a hard time, and the guy hung up. I was like, you can't answer for killing women and children. The only thing the machine can do is hang up the phone. There is no answer for it. So I was like, wow. That's the world we live in, and that's international politics at the minute, you know, how it gets played out, United Nations, NATO, America. We're going to what? We're going to go to have a World War III because 2 Russians might have got poisoned, but yet on English news today, Anglo, British, United Kingdom have all been told that Israel's out there shooting children. I know it's thousands of miles away, it's only a few children, and they don't suffer for long, so it's alright. You know what? We shouldn't be in a world like this. We don't like it. We
all over the front door of the house allegedly, and that's where they reckon they got rid of stuff. Yeah, the coppers were in and out the door for 3 days before they discovered the fucking poison. So the coppers are all right.
Yeah, it's you see what's going on. It's a world stage. There's a saying by somebody. The whole world is a stage.
Agenda 21, isn't it?
You see, it is, isn't it? The whole world is seen like a TV show.
It is, yeah.
I mean,
David Icke says that.
The army are there, all in the suits and protective gear, and the gear of
Firefighter, yeah. Still not
Here you go, puppy.
so
What do you say? Thank God for police tape, it cures all.
Right, I just finish this off. I just got this little bit here, then we'll move on to the board. It is clear that even today, while the common law remains at times rigid and inflexible in the hands of adventurous and bold judges, who put as the #1 priority, let justice be done, the principles of equity, the maxims of law would come in handy, and the maxims of equity would come in handy there as well, to compel and instruct judges, by virtue of the fact that in spite of its own body of judgment made precedent, it is fundamentally based on the principles of natural justice, gives greater flexibility and the right to take on a more liberal view of a situation. A statement made by Lord Millet reads as follows: for equity is on the march again after a long, I can just hear a posh Oxford voice, for a long year of slumber. After a long years of slumber during the post-war period, fitfully broken by Lord Dennings, in the interest which he revived in promissory and proprietary estoppel. So he revived in promissory and proprietary estoppel. It is now fully awake. Indeed, so that's a good thing to quote to a, in a court or something, that bit there, Lord Miller, equity on the march again, blah, blah, blah. So it is indeed fully awake, indeed rampant. It has broken through the traditional barriers which would confine its operation to the home and family and entered the business world. it brings with it obligations of loyalty, confidence and good faith, obligations higher than those imposed by common law. Oh, wow, boom, that'll do for us then, won't it?
Yeah.
That'll ding dang do. Which is satisfied with honesty, careful conduct and keeping one's promises. So that's in honour and clean hands. But when you go to these domains, you don't get treated like a king. They don't say, hello there, my sir, and, you know, please come and sit down. We kind of get you. It's so horrible and hostile. And just because they say this on paper, it isn't anything like that. It is in principle and in the books. But you need to get that information from the books, constructively down, stand on it, in private hopefully, and reference it and serve and notice and play the, what is it called now, pre-action protocols, and you would manage it like that, keep your case reference file, so then if it did force you to go to the last stage, which would be the black road through their ignorance, acquiescence, disclaiming of their trustee duties, failure to act, be compelled, such things as, then you'd be like, right, here we go. And then he'd probably, if you could do it right, correctly, then you would probably say, what we're doing here, lad's done everything that he should have done, he's got clean hands, blah, blah, blah. First in time is first in line as well. That's an important, is it a maxim? Yeah, it's, so yeah, the exposure of commercial world to the equitable concepts in bringing a host of problems which we are only now beginning to grapple. We still are now, and we're like, what, 80 years on, and further reiterates the significant role of the judge in allowing the full effect of equitable principles to be brought to bear, as well as highlighting the higher human. I'd say, well, you can only act in personam in equity, it only serves the man, a corporation, fictitious entity, things like that can't use equity, only personam can, only, you can't get like the Met Office or the government departments or anybody taking you, using equity would be man on man. So they're saying human aspirations implied through equity as opposed to the more rigid common law. Rigid saying, yeah, that's it, assumptions, presumptions, you read into that, you are as it is, contracted and bonded. Aspirations such as loyalty, confidence and good faith. From the above statement, it is also clear that in the coming years there is greater scope and probability that the equitable principles will hold an ever stronger position, oh yes, of an independent system of legal principles to further the interests of justice. So the key word there is legal principles. Legal and lawful, because some of these, as Andy said on one of the videos, you can't use your corporation's policy to break the effing law. You can't use this rule book to break the law of the of England, not United Kingdom, criminal law or anything, can you?
You can't enforce an act to break the law, can you? It's as simple as that.
Rules, acts, anything, yeah. We were talking about company rules, acts, public legislation, you've got the law of the land, and if you're going to cause harm, injury, fraudulent dealings, duress, things like that, then you're going to have to answer for that. And if you haven't got the correct capacity status, like the police, here we go again. You've got the police there, it's a civil matter, something to do with a prepayment meter, and they're drilling, the guys there drilling a lot. Why aren't the police drilling them lots? If it's an issue for that, why are the police there? If they're so big to go out as an officer to attend for a breach of the peace, then who's paying for that lot to be drilled? The electric company. So the electric company have hired the police then, have they? Like the courts and the council hire the courts. There's a relationship going on, isn't there? That's what we stand there and say.
This is what I pointed out at Mark's sister's house. Why is your corporation defending and enforcing the rules of that separate corporation?
Yes, that's exactly what they're doing.
It's liability. The police don't have liability. That man was who's drilling the locks. So when the claim comes in, oh, you drilled my... No, we didn't. We didn't drill the locks. Well, who did it? John Smith did. From John Smith's Lockkeepers. Go and see him. What? Yeah, well, you brought it. No, he didn't. Energy company did. And they just pass it all about. And it's like, oh, they're so slippery. Little otters.
Wenches, aren't they?
Aiding and abetting.
Well, the fact is, I think this would be peace if we didn't stand aside.
Is that one? Say again.
How can I breach the peace on my own private property?
It's absurd.
So the closing argument is, it is submitted that from the above arguments it becomes clear that the statements made in Ashbourne's Principles of Equity, the two streams of jurisdiction through they run the same channel, run side by side and do not mingle their waters, is indeed a fair summing up of the independent positions held by both equity and the common law within the same administrative framework. So what they've done, they've built, there was a good layer of courts and there was a good established system, and what they've done, they've built a layer of crap on a good base foundation. So this is what we're seeing, which was claiming fraud and you know, deception. It is. It's personage. It's barratry. It's deception. There's no bonds. The only bond open is the one of your legal person's name that the clerks, the justices will have access to. The 3 magistrates don't have access to that. So again, when you kick off and you start going on about your birth certificate, the not power of attorney, representative, sole shareholder, layman, blah blah blah, not contracting, and we mentioned, so where's the bonds then? Well, you've got one open there. And that's when the subrogation argument would come in for the discharging of all claims and debts. If there's any kind of issue here, then as well as the debtor, I'm the creditor. Well, the man is, the creditor. The legal person's the debtor. The claim is against the all caps fiction. The bond is open with the clerks of the justice. They don't like the public cars, it goes down like a ton of brown.
And we are the share.
Do you know what I mean? So, what are you doing? You only get the book out and it's alright. Do I need to? I haven't done that yet, but getting to that stage. We're on the cusp of that.
I've been looking at it.
Yeah. So, oh, has he got to say? Yeah.
I'm wrong about that.
All right, then, nice one, Wayne. A judge in front of a sovereign woman is not a judge, a magistrate who cannot dispense judgment. He is an administrator. Indeed, he is, Wayne. Well said, respect. Good day, morning. Look at this. So I've got through. Thank you, Wayne. This bump, brother. I can't leave it a long line. That was important to get. So do you all have a better cognition now of what and when and who and why and the amount of years? They say 1500, 1800. So 1845. There's a lot of history there. Richard Ansar has helped me get this, and he's the one that I'm mentoring from. Not trying to sell his courses and his website.
Is this what you posted online last night, David?
No, this is in Facebook. This is on the group. Yeah, I've submitted it. I can give you any once you give me a message. And now I'm working for the trust. My time management. So when I was working 40 hours a week for the corporation, I had to obviously go to that contractually, then look at the 100 notifications a day what come through, and it just gets a bit, I don't mean to be rude but to some people sometimes, but it gets a bit tight with sleeping, eating and management. Yeah. It has been since November 2015. So now I've given the job up for the £26,000. I was a team leader, like a first line manager for a major international corporation that's floated on the stock market. So I've given up a really secure, well-paying job. Not to put guilt on you, no, because I thought it was right. I can't deal with this, and I think I've got the. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I've got a lot of improving to make. So my time management will now be focused as working for the trust for 30 hours minimum a week. So that would be the messages, the emails, and building the website. Linking up with Andy, doing Google Hangouts workshops, online seminars, coming back here and holding Sovereign Masters Guild workshops or whatever the title will be, something fancy, give out some actual proper certificates, and we'll have scenario-based training here, or maybe we'll do it online with webinars. I don't know how accessible it will be, but we'll get to that. But my time management now is completely, I've got a little office set up. I intend to work 30 hours every day, at least, some hours. Every day. I at least expect to get up and look at my emails, and there'll be some hours every day. It won't be like 10 hours and then 10 hours and 10 hours and then you don't hear from me for 4 days. I'm still, as a trustee, responsible. As the governor or settler trustee, I will operate every day, but it will be minimum 30 hours. And I need to focus on the membership for the website. And has anyone got any feedback for that? Has anybody been on, had a look, navigated, or?
I tried to go on, and then now I can't get back on. So I need my password.
I've got some admin issues.
Take it off so I can do it again.
Well, if you message me, I can do that. There is a bit of teething problems. I'm not a website engineer. I've got a technician helping, and any teething problems will be sorted out. There is, I think, it's like 64 active members, a total of 120 something on there now. We're going to get 400 PDFs loaded up. These data protection and the amendments that you've said about the GDRP. All the documents, 400 PDFs are checked, validated, vetted, articulate, concise, referenceable, searchable. Forums, we're going to have like a national health forum just for hospitals, what's going on there, and keep that in the main thread. Then the opposite of what Facebook does on the SPL site, you'll see on the main feed, we have it mixed up, and it's just the most commented the most recently commented post gets put to the top. So we lose a lot, and the search menu isn't too good on Facebook. It deletes and doesn't show us everything what's there. So the files will be managed, indexed, searchable by name, reference, type, law. Something that we've got structure and direction on, which we haven't seemed to got much of at the minute. So that's the aim of the game there. And like I say, 25p a week, £1 a month, £12 a year donation, and that will get you as a beneficiary access to all of the forums, the site, anything we do later down the line. As we said, like if we get in a van and we drive about, or we go and make telephone calls and take power of attorney, and after a bit it just adds up money, doesn't it? We're in a monetary system. We don't agree with it, and we can talk about the private side and how to use it, but at the minute we're quite until we've corrected everything and got there, we're not really empowered to do that. So I mentioned technology gets to a certain point, the blockchain technology, and then we can get rid of money. We don't need to have it. We've got 3D printers, we can print a house, we can, we don't need, this is slavery, this is, the equity thieves are making us be slaves unnecessarily for this fiscal perpetual money, the debt system that we're in that serves their needs, but it's not really serving any of ours. The world has still starving children. The money allows children to starve. Yeah, it's a man-made scarcity what we're seeing. We have the capability to grow our own food, to get it organic back to how it was, and manage it and not be in debt. And to do Mr. Thrive and Survive from YouTube's approached me. I had a chat with Sun and Moon Flat Earth, and they've got the People for People network, and that's going really well. I'd urge you to join that, or to look in the Facebook group for People to People. He's based in America, and he's going to link up all the states and have a common unity, not barter, levy and trade, but no fiscal perpetual debt. If you've got a job that needs doing and it's mechanical, and I've got a job that needs doing and it needs, I need a wall doing, and I'm a mechanic and someone else is a brickie, then we just swap over and do a job, as long as it's comparable. I'm not saying you've got to repoint 2 layers of brick and then I'll do an engine rebuild or something. No, it's got to be proportionate. You're not living in a system where you can be tricked in that dishonour. It'd be honourable, and I think we could do it. There's means and ways. There's a lot of talk about different ways of managing, and you know that yourselves now, energy, solar power, hydrogen that I've found and I'm promoting. There's somewhere in down south, it's called the Froome FM. I'm not sure how you spell it, Somerset area, and they're doing a little project around there and going organic and sorting it out, so we don't have to use the main, markets and things that we see. So if we claimed it all back, we could get rid of the supermarkets, and we've got an existing infrastructure that we could use, like lorries and lorry drivers and the supermarkets. We just take Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, Lidl, all of the the main ones off, and we just put food distribution centre.
We can help the homeless as well.
Yeah, we could manage the whole system. We could do it. We've got. It's not about how would we do it. It's all there. We're using it wrong.
Yes.
And we just need to stop, come back, and maybe go right. We say manifesto proposal is perhaps that sovereign declaration, treaty of independence would be. And then you put that to one side, and what you'd want to say to happen with the United Kingdom, in essence, and what we would propose in the private capacity would be how you'd want things to change and so forth. You'd fight them and say that, on that, but not fight them with regards to your states and capacity. Manage that correctly. I haven't managed that yet. I consider myself a private, sovereign, self-governing man, and I have persons. I have 2 persons, an all caps and a lowercase private name, and I don't claim them titles. I manage them and I handle them. I did send a claim of right off to Theresa May some years ago, and that was done wrong, so I'll hold my hands up. I was younger then, not young, well, I know it was only 4 years ago. Younger and naive and quite angry then in the beginning, so then after the last 3 years I've got more immersed and involved in the language, the dogma, the glossa, the Latin, the paper size. Go to a printer, check your paper size when you go to print. It's got the settings legal. It's got, when you type a legal document, it must be a certain height and so many spaces apart for it to be. And it's like, what? We write out a document, we'll autograph it, and we'll autonomously write it and put either the equitable asset on there signed without liability, or you would put your thumbprints and sign it as the man. You could sign it with all rights reserved, none wavered, things like that. And we write documents out, so it doesn't matter about this. It's got to be so high and so many spaces apart. You write out a statement of truth, an affidavit form, or something like that, and they'll accept it. It doesn't matter what colour pen, what size paper, anything. But when you are actually, say like a solicitor operating or someone in the public operating in the trade as a licensed legal professional, they will need to write the document out, and the space and what they submit to the court will have to comply with it's their gang, it's their, you know, it's their team, isn't it? It's not ours, so we don't have any rules to comply to. And that's where they tried to trick us over with that. Oh, you need to fill out a stat debt. No, we don't. It's a process for you, but not for me. And we stood there and said that with Thomas when we went to Oxford Magistrate. Wasn't there, but he got offered the time before, you know, and he's like, yeah, well, I'll give it you anyway. No, I don't want it. Yeah, but you need to take, no, I don't need to take it, because then they can put you've been served it, which is the same as filling it in. He's like, I don't want it. I don't, all right then, we've got a statement of truth though. Oh, you don't want that. That's the game, you see. Hey, you don't want mine, I don't want yours. Funny that, isn't it? You know, it's wow. Yes,
make a statutory declaration of your own name.
It's a statement of truth. The statutory declaration is a legal instrument, you know, that you'd be using there. That's recognising the public. Your one would be the private name.
Your legal name.
Andy, do you want to speak? Say anything?
No, not really. I'm private.
The tea break, yeah, we can have a tea break, a fag break. I think we will, yeah, we'll pause then.
I'll
I'll leave this on. You guys can be bored for a bit. We're coming back and have a tea break, fag break. We get back to the list afterwards, yeah. Good idea. Yeah, but they're only going to legalise it.
Sorry, I just bowled it. No, I know, it's mine that gives us one. Not that attached. My missus have killed me. For a bowl, I've got a piece to go
yeah, that's alright, don't worry, thank you for coming though. It's getting here, that's the main thing.
I'm still right out on the edges.
Where do you come from? Oh, right. Yeah, but it's a big place, isn't it? It's a big place.
Magistrates go to Cambridge. We'll take the subscription and send that to because they've already judged against me. Without no court, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for procedure, action call.
Yeah, I was advice of the Dean.
What? Greenway from
Yeah,
Mars?
yeah.
Oh, you've been well advised then.
Yeah.
You've been well advised, I don't even need to ask them. Yeah, respect to you. Awesome. Glad to hear it.
As you said, it's like you was at that stage a couple of years ago where it was scary.
Yeah, angry and scared, yeah. It's overwhelming. Like, what do you mean it's not for real? What do you mean it's a business?
I got snatches.
It can't be real.
About 72 miles an hour.
Right.
That's the one that's coming through. 72 miles an hour.
Yeah, but then you can say that you know it's what would I say? It's 2 miles in tolerance. Yeah, you'd argue that. You've got to argue something. Calibration, please. When were you last calibrated? What about mine? I might have been, you know. Because it's a process, you know. You got the assumptions and presumptions. Just try that again. I need to get my Wi-Fi.
And by themselves, respectively. The Office of King of England is not instituted by the people, merely as an office of profit and honour. But he was so appointed as Chief Trustee and Guardian of the Constitution. Personal duties are annexed to the regal office.
Come on.
The objects of which are to promote the good of the people, preserve their rights in full vigour from innovation and corruption. That's the duty of the people. Preserve the Constitution of England and the rights of the people against the encroachment and in order to enforce the duty. The coronation.
1 minute, guys. We're going to come back. All right. Just give me 5-10 minutes.